The unrest across the Middle East, as well as the unstable Western Balkans, just a few hundred kilometers from where we are gathered today. Our guest is the only representative of the current US administration at this year's forum, a lawyer, politician, and a diplomat. I will be your host. I'm Katja Šeruga, news director at N1 Slovenia. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome US Ambassador to NATO, Matthew Whitaker. So a lot has happened. This Sunday, a plane carrying European Commission President was hit by GPS interference with Russia suspected of being behind the incident. What do your latest findings indicate? And if Russia is indeed behind this, how should we understand this in the context of efforts to bring the war to an end?
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm glad to be here in Slovenia at the BLED conference. My good friend Andre, the permanent representative for this beautiful country, invited me to come here, and he said it would be an easy conversation about just some news of the day. But let's talk about hybrid warfare, because in my mind, this is right in the wheelhouse, right? One of the reasons that NATO is together, did come together as an alliance, the strongest alliance in the history of the planet. 32 allies that have a level of trust with each other, a level of cooperation that's really never been seen. And our adversaries, our strategic competitors, however you want to label China and Russia and North Korea and Iran and others, they can't understand an alliance. They can't understand how we work together as allies, how we can cooperate, how we can train together, fight together. It's inconceivable, because again, they're all about taking advantage and taking all they can for themselves and acting in their own self-interest and being selfish. So hybrid warfare is, again, I think a unique place where NATO, and I'm pushing NATO and our allies to really think through this and to do more to combat hybrid warfare, whether it's jamming of radio frequencies or GPS, those types of techniques, or it is interception, hacking. I mean, all of the kind of things that we see coming out of places like Russia and China. And so I can't, obviously, I know you want me to give you all the intelligence that I've been briefed on this recent incident. I can't, unfortunately. What I will tell you is this is just it appears to be another example of a country trying to take advantage of or fly below the Article 5 sort of threshold and really cause havoc. And that's what I worry about the most, and not in this instance, but in these instances generally, is just the reckless nature, the chaos causing that some of these countries want to do. And it's again, NATO needs to come up, I think, with a better strategy. I'm pushing our allies. We're going to have some discussions this fall now that everybody's back. This whole experience of summer vacation for me has been interesting, to live and work in Europe and have all of my colleagues disappear for the whole month of August. Not all of them, but many of them from time. And so getting used to that. But now that we're all back, it's September, school's in session, we're in session. This is an important matter that we need to address.
If we try to get back to the news of the day, Russia's President Putin said yesterday in Beijing that he reached understandings with US President Trump over the end of the war in Ukraine. So what can we expect next?
So President Trump is a peacemaker. He has at least 6 peace deals that he has been involved in, and as recent as the hosting the Armenian and Azerbaijanis to sign their agreement to end that conflict that really has been going on for decades. President Trump and the entire team, Steve Witkoff, Secretary Rubio, and others, are trying to find an agreement between Ukraine and Russia where there will be an end to the fighting. Again, we all see the publicly available information where hundreds, if not thousands, of soldiers and civilians are dying and being injured in Ukraine. And it has to end. This war's been going on over 3 years now, 3.5 years, and it needs to end. And President Trump sees this, and he is trying to mediate a resolution. But he recently said, and it's true, it takes two to tango, and that means that the only way we can have an end to this war is to have both sides come together and agree. Now, I have, since you mentioned earlier when we were talking, you've watched some of my recent interviews, and so you've seen me talk about the fact that at least both sides are now talking to each other. They're exchanging prisoners of war, for example. They've exchanged bodies of the fallen. There are communications going on. Is it happening fast enough? Not as fast as all of us would like, because we'd like this war to end. And that's why, and I continue to encourage our NATO allies to stay engaged in supporting Ukraine through our, Pearl initiative, which is selling U.S. weapons to our NATO allies that are then being provided to Ukraine, or through other support. We have a whole bunch of different initiatives that have been set up, whether it's the Czech ammunition initiative and so many others, as to how we can support Ukraine. But the way that we continue to have the necessary leverage for Ukraine is to continue to make them strong, to arm them, to allow them to fight the fight, and and at the same time continue to work on the coalition of the willing, continue to work on the things that are going to provide this leverage. That includes sanctions. That includes potential asset forfeitures. That includes continued pressure on trading partners of Russia. So there are a lot of things, and the challenge, and I go back to the recent summit we had in The Hague, and that summit, the whole purpose is, we can talk about the headline that came out, is that our allies in NATO have all agreed to spend 5% on defense and defense-related material. But really what the summit set up was this idea of Europe taking over more of the traditional defense of the European continent, and really having these countries that are rich, powerful countries with big economies to step into the rightful place of providing security in Europe and, quite frankly, globally. And that's, that we found ourselves in a situation where the peace dividend had been taken for too long, that countries like Germany were dramatically underspending on their own defense, and therefore the collective defense. And so I reminded everyone, when they mentioned Article 5 and how important that guarantee and how ironclad it was, and wanted me to, sort of affirm Article 5, I would remind them that the treaty has more than just one article. It has Article 3, which all allies agree to provide for their individual defense and therefore the collective defense. And so, you can't have one without the other. It is, and that is what I think happened at the summit. I think Europeans and Canada stepped in and said, okay, we're going to do more. We're going to equalize. We're going to partner. And this is going to be a true alliance. This isn't going to be a dependency on the United States to, come in and solve all of our problems. This is going to be a true joint venture, a true agreement among allies. And and then the question would always be, well, what happens when a European country or Europeans or Canadians or any other NATO ally wants more responsibility or more say in NATO? I was like, fantastic. Fantastic. I would love the day when one of these countries comes and says, we think we're ready to provide, something that only right now the United States can provide. That'd be fantastic. That means that our mission has been accomplished.
A lot of countries struggled, actually, after the NATO summit in The Hague. Slovenia was among them due to the 5% target. They had some difficulties explaining at home such an increase in defense spending. But the alliance will review the spending of its members in 2029, I think, when Donald Trump is no longer in the White House. And this is exactly what those countries who struggle at home are actually counting on. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's too bad.
Okay.
So, I'll expand. I remember one of our great allies talking about that this 5% commitment was pushing the envelope, was sort of at the sort of as far as we can get this and maybe too far. And we have to step back. We have to think about the history of this continent and the history of these countries and the purpose of NATO. The purpose of NATO is, one, to keep the United States engaged in European security and the architecture. But at the same time, it is to make sure that we're all part of an alliance, we're all allies, so that we don't fight among each other and try to take advantage of disagreements on borders or whatever the situation might be. Because again, World War I and World War II were so catastrophic. And now we find ourselves, quite frankly, in the middle of another war, traditional war, on the European continent.
Yes.
Now, it doesn't involve NATO territory, but it has the equal and dramatic effects that other wars have had. It's had migration challenges. It is certainly affected economies. It has disrupted supply chains and agricultural production and all of the classic challenges that war presents.
Meanwhile, in Ukraine...
You don't like the way I'm filibustering you, do you?
No, at all.
She's going to start getting that tough reporter questions now. Start asking me yes-no questions, right?
Meanwhile, Ambassador, in Ukraine, the fighting continues also after the summit in Alaska. On Thursday, we saw a very deadly Russian attack, killing, according to Ukrainian authorities, at least 25 people, including 4 children. Why hasn't the United States called for an immediate ceasefire after such an attack, barely 2 weeks after Alaska? And why did, in your opinion, the US president choose to stay silent?
I think the United States has been very clear we want this war to end. We want the fighting to stop. I think it's a very... I'm going to say naive to believe that the United States can decree that the fighting stop and that somehow Russia or Ukraine or that either side will stop the fighting. And there is not the elephant in the room is that there's not the political will among our allies to do what it takes to stop this war.
Which allies?
All allies, all 32 NATO allies. There is a lot more that could be done. There's a lot more that could be done.
Be more specific.
Well, Europe could put troops in. But nobody's willing to do that. And guess what? They always want this is my frustration with where we find ourselves. We are back. The summit was successful. We all patted ourselves on the back. All NATO allies agreed to spend 5% in the next decade, primarily on 3.5% on true defense, military, but the other 1.5% on critical defense-related mobility, infrastructure, cybersecurity. Again, the things that will make the alliance strong. But then that's on the one hand, and we all say, well, okay, everybody, Europe's stepping up. And then on the other hand, it's like, well, okay, United States, what are you going to do? The United States makes about 53%, 54% of the NATO alliance. So there's 31 other allies that are essentially equal, that could have an equal voice. And that's where I think if we continue to work together, and these I want to make sure, we condemn these attacks on civilians. These are outrageous. You don't send missiles and drones into cities and kill children and hit hospitals. That's just that is not the modern world that we have all signed up for. But at the same time, that's where we find ourselves. And expecting the United States to solve this alone is just, I just don't think it's not fair. It's not the world we find ourselves in. And again, Europe has agreed to accept more responsibility for Europe. And so Europe should find and continue to work for mechanisms that equally put the leverage on both combatants, but especially Russia, to settle and resolve this war.
So while the meeting between the Ukrainian and Russian presidents is, at least at this moment, still not in sight, the blame game continues. But exactly, could you be more specific when you talk about European efforts to put their forces or to send their forces to Ukraine?
Europe is holding over 200 billion euros of assets that they're unwilling to seize. That's one example. And again, it seems like every time I mention something like this, it's just sort of, oh, okay, yeah, you're right, we won't do that, Matt. Okay, well, you could. I mean, there comes with great risk. But everybody expects the United States to take these great risks and ignore sort of the other. I mean, we're all going to have to continue to leverage and to find ways to get to a peace deal. And obviously we're not there yet, or it would happen. And again, the United States put a 50% tariff on India. That 50% tariff went into effect and is dramatically changing India's behavior as it relates to buying oil and gas from Russia.
Are you considering putting similar measures also to restrict Russia's trade with China?
I mean, that negotiation is ongoing on all of our trading relationship with China, and it is certainly part of that discussion. But you just saw. I mean, I saw the pictures, and you mentioned the statement of Putin that came out of a meeting of India, China, and Russia. Yes. I mean, it is very much a group that is trying to organize themselves and counter what we have built in the West. I think that's good because I think we represent the values that are better, that are freedom, opportunity, a flourishing citizenry. I think we offer better than what is forming on the other side. But we cannot ignore that those folks that want to continue the war, specifically China, India, and the combatant Russia, I mean, that they are organizing themselves to try to avoid the impacts of this war.
Well, you said many times, and so did the other members of the administration, that the strategy is to stop the killing and to end the war. But to be a little bit more specific, U.S. Vice President Vance recently said that U.S. wants to protect Ukraine's territorial integrity. What does that mean exactly, Ambassador?
Well, I can't speak for J.D. Vance, and so J.D. Vance is is going to have to cover his own comments. What I would say is that certainly I believe it has been articulated from the highest levels of the federal government that the United States wants Ukraine to continue as a independent country that has democratic elections and provides for itself. And obviously Ukraine continues to want to be part of Europe. They want to be part of the EU. They want to be part of NATO. And so that's that's one of the issues that are currently on the table that we read about in the negotiations to resolve this war. But Russia doesn't want to end the fighting, and so I go back to where I started, which is we need to continue, especially our European allies need to continue to lean in and make sure that Ukraine can defend itself and be given the space to do what they're doing, which is to develop deeper strike capabilities. They have just started using a new missile, which again changes the calculation. If you can fire a missile 2,000 to 3,000 kilometers into Russia, that's a different opportunity to defend themselves than maybe what they had previously.
But to be a little bit more specific, what is the strategy to help Ukraine achieve victory, to preserve as much Ukrainian territory as possible, to persuade Ukraine to cede occupied territories to Russia and how much of its territory, or to prevent a total defeat?
Well, Katja, there's no victory for either side, unfortunately. The killing needs to end. President Trump has been very clear about this, that this death, destruction, just absolute obliteration that is happening every single day on the battlefield needs to end. It is unconscionable that for 3.5 years this has gone on, that over 1 million soldiers have died on the battlefield. Obviously, the resolution is none of what you just said. It's a negotiated end to the fighting. And we're in the United States of America. President Trump is investing a lot of time, effort in trying to resolve this conflict.
So if Ukraine were to cede part of its territory, it would likely do so in exchange for strong, or maybe even exceptionally strong, guarantees from the West. You spoke a little bit earlier about what the U.S. is expecting from Europe, but when it comes to American boots on the ground, that's a definite no.
Well, President Trump has said there won't be an American boots on the ground.
Could you confirm that the United States would deploy American private military firms to Ukraine? And if you can...
I can't confirm anything like that. So here's the thing. We are in the middle of negotiating this. Ukraine is going to have to agree to anything that comes about from an end to the fighting. So is Russia. They're going to both have to agree. And what the security framework looks like and who participates, I think is still an ongoing discussion and negotiation. I'm actually encouraged by the coalition of the willing, and what I'm hearing sort of is being proposed by our NATO allies, and it's much broader than our NATO allies. I think there's almost 50 countries that are participating in the coalition of the willing that would ultimately be the main part of the security guarantee. So, but I think it's premature to say what is or what is in any security guarantees, and I have nothing to comment about private security firms or who would participate in that.
Okay. Among the leaders who maintain good relations with Russia and China are also Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić and President of Republika Srpska Milorad Dodik. In Serbia, the protests have recently turned increasingly violent. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, Milorad Dodik is not complying with the court's decision. What is your risk assessment showing, and how does the United States see these two leaders, as stability factors in the Western Balkans or as a liability?
Well, first we need stability. I mean, as we're sitting here today in a country that straddles, sort of Central Europe and the Western Balkans. We know that the Western Balkans have had, kind of, especially since the dissolution of Yugoslavia, what has happened with the wars and the ethnic conflict, and so we certainly the United States wants stability in the Western Balkans. We've invested a lot of time and effort in the Western Balkans. Slovenia obviously has invested a lot of time and effort and boots on the ground as part of KFOR, and so we have we're paying very close attention to everything that's going on in both Republika Srpska and Serbia, but right now, we're just making sure that it doesn't sort of turn into a potential regional conflict. And at the same time, this is another place where we're trying to ensure that our European allies in NATO are ready, willing, and able to provide any security forces or political pressure to make sure that we can kind of keep stability in the Western Balkans.
According to some media reports in the Western Balkans, Vučić and Dodik are making strong efforts to secure a meeting with US President Trump. Vučić has actually already tried once. In May this year, he was in Florida seeking to arrange a meeting with Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Do you believe that President Trump would receive them, will receive them, and give them the support they are seeking to remain in power?
I really have nothing to add to that. I think President Trump really has a unique ability to talk to people, to pick up the phone, to have conversations, to talk to world leaders, and to use the influence of the presidency of the United States and the power of the United States of America to advance the interests of peace, democracy, stability, and an economic opportunity. And if President Trump determines that there is a reason to meet with either of those leaders, then I'm sure he would take a meeting. But at the same time, I think he is clear-eyed, because again he has a really deep understanding of how all of these issues and leaders fit together in the broader picture. And so I think, if he does that, then I think he believes that there's an opportunity to advance, that agenda that I mentioned. But he's certainly not going to take a meeting to try to help a leader strengthen their political position. That is not, what President Trump does. He is a deal maker. He's a peacemaker. And so if there's an opportunity to advance U.S. values and interests, then he might take a meeting. But I'm certainly not here to announce any pending meetings with the Serbian leader or the Republic Srpska leader.
Do you think that NATO would intervene if the political crisis were to escalate into an armed conflict, especially in Bosnia at the moment, but also in Serbia?
Ultimately, that's up for all 32 allies. We work on a unanimity basis. I think we're a long way from anything like that. Obviously, EUFOR, is on, has troops there, and I think we would continue to encourage all sides to work consistently with the Dayton Accords. I was in Dayton this year, celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Dayton Accords, and I just think there is a framework there to resolve disagreements and to kind of encourage peace, and that's what we should always work towards. Whether NATO is going to be involved, there's rule number one of politics is don't answer sort of hypotheticals. So I think we'll just have to see how these develop. And one of the things that I know about the world and conflict and history is that whatever you expect is going to happen, usually the opposite happens. So we'll just again, NATO is stronger now than it's ever been. It is more focused than it's ever been, and I think that is good for Europe. That is good for the North Atlantic, and it should be very concerning to our adversaries.
Back in 1999, due to the war in Kosovo and ethnic cleansing, NATO bombed Serbia for 11 weeks. US was fully on board. In light of those events, how does, in your assessment, the US position appears today when it comes to the war in Gaza, where IPC has declared famine, which means that at least 30% children suffer from acute malnutrition, and the world's genocidal activities and even genocide are also being used on a high political level in Europe?
What's the question?
How do you think, in light of those events, the US position today appears today when it comes to the war in Gaza?
Well, again, President Trump and Special Envoy Witkoff are fully engaged in trying to resolve that conflict. As I've said many times, there's one side that could resolve this immediately, and that is Hamas. If Hamas said, we surrender, we're no longer fighting, and the people in Gaza would immediately be better off than they are now. The destruction and the death and the images we're seeing are heartbreaking. And at the same time that this is all being caused by Hamas and the fallout from their October 7th unprovoked attack on Israel, where over 1,000 Israelis died. So, I think President Trump is working with both sides. Steve Witkoff is working with both sides. My friend Ambassador Huckabee is certainly fully engaged, and we're just going to have to let it work. But again, Hamas is the one that could end this immediately, and the people of Gaza are suffering because of Hamas. And I just don't think we can, morally equate both sides as somehow being equal in their responsibility for what the suffering is happening. It's I am the ambassador to NATO, and so I'm a little far afield talking about the Middle East, and there are better voices than me that could probably get a deeper explanation of what our plan and what our policy is. But I would just say that right now this is another place where the reason that we're seeing fighting continue in Gaza and in Gaza City, for example, is because Hamas is continuing to fight.
But at the same time, the Israeli offensive has not achieved its key objectives: to defeat Hamas and to secure the return of all the Israeli hostages. In months the war is going on, these key objectives are still not achieved. And if Donald Trump, as you said earlier, is actually the only one who can bring peace to Ukraine, that he's most certainly the only one.
Did I say that?
Many times before.
The only one? I think he's... okay. I mean, I think it's a little more nuanced, but so I want to explain that.
Please do.
Yeah, so Donald Trump is uniquely in a position to bring both sides of the table.
Okay.
I don't think, Donald Trump can't declare peace in Ukraine. It's going to take both sides to come together and with an agreement. And Ukraine's going to have to agree to whatever the situation is, and Russia's going to have to agree to whatever this is. And we're not there yet. But he is uniquely has the ability. He's the only one that can bring them to the table. He's the only one that brought Putin to the table. He's the only one that can continue to keep him at the table.
So to be more accurate, the only one who can help to end the war. But he's certainly the only one then, most certainly, who can influence Israeli Prime Minister. What is the American administration doing in this regard? Namely, calls for President Trump to help to put an end to war in Gaza are already loud on the streets of Israel, and they are coming from the families of Israeli hostages taken by Hamas.
Yeah, I mean, again, President Trump wants this conflict to end. And, he has had a lot of conversations with the Israelis, and we've had conversations at all levels. And we've had conversations with the folks, from Hamas, and we've talked to interlocutors from the Middle East. And, again, this is another situation where, ultimately both sides are going to have to resolve this. It's horrific, and in a modern world, it is a little bit surprising that we still have just these situations where, for whatever reason, political gain, territorial ambitions, or whatever, where you just end up in these intractable things. But I don't see the conflict in Ukraine as the same as the Gaza situation. The Gaza situation is you have essentially a terrorist organization in Hamas that is continuing to hide behind civilians, exploit civilians, hide in hospitals, have tunnels. I mean, it is like no organization that we can have that's a proxy of Iran. Which is, kind of brings their own complexions to it. I just, at the end of the day, Hamas is the one that is going to decide how long they want the people of Gaza to suffer. The Israelis have should have the ability to defend themselves. We could everyone knows that if there was not Hamas shooting and causing chaos at these, aid points in the distribution of aid, that this would be a very orderly situation. But Hamas chooses to cause the chaos, and therefore they're choosing, by extension, to cause the suffering of the people of Gaza.
Mm-hmm. According to recent media reports, the U.S. is now denying visas for almost all applicants who use Palestinian passport. Can you confirm that, and what's the end game here?
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that. I can't confirm or deny that that's happening. And again, I'm one of the nice things of being the U.S. ambassador to NATO is I don't have a consular service, so I don't even have to worry about that.
Based on recent media reports, furthermore, there is allegedly a proposal on the table under which the U.S. assumes control over Gaza for 10 years, and at the same time, Palestinians who leave Gaza and relocate receive $5,000 each. Could you clarify this?
I'm not going to comment on media reports that are not verified by the United States, and it does not sound to me like a serious proposal. But I don't have any. I'm not involved in any peace negotiations regarding Gaza, so I don't have anything to add. But I would. I think Abraham Lincoln said it best. He said, "Don't believe everything you read on the internet."
Okay. The State Department and the White House indeed didn't comment on this, but it was President Trump himself some time ago who was talking about Gaza becoming the Riviera of the Middle East, and just recently he met with Jared Kushner and ex-British PM Tony Blair in the White House, so that's probably why this report...
Yeah, and listen, I think it captures something that we should all be thinking about as sort of a world of peacemakers, and that is that the potential for Gaza is quite extraordinary, and what Hamas has sort of allowed to happen or caused in Gaza, I mean, it's a shame. I mean, it should be a beautiful place on the Mediterranean, and it's not. And so I certainly think President Trump sees the potential for it, and again, I think that's his eye for real estate is obviously very good. Just look what he's done with the White House. I mean, it's been it's really been quite enlightened with the gold accoutrement that he has added. So that being said, I don't have anything to add to sort of unsubstantiated news reports.
Also, NATO concern was that the conflict in the Middle East might escalate further. The U.S. intervened and bombed Iran nuclear facilities. What developments can be anticipated in the period ahead in that sense?
The United States, will continue to be a great friend and a great ally. Iran was told that we had a red line, that you would not develop nuclear weapons. That red line hasn't changed. We took action to ensure that Iran would not possess a nuclear weapon that would destabilize dramatically the Middle East. It would cause a nuclear escalation that no one wants to see. And so, President Trump took decisive action, ended the 12-day war, demonstrated U.S. military capabilities that only the United States of America can provide by flying B-2 bombers from just south of my home state of Iowa, from Kansas City, all the way halfway around the world, dropping precision munitions, and then returning home and having dinner with their families. I think, it's just without being detected. Did I mention that? So we have exquisite, unique capabilities, and we will continue to deploy those when it's in the U.S. interest and again in our allies' interests. And that's why I encourage all 31 other NATO allies to join us in the modernization of our defense capabilities to continue to increase their defense and defense-related spending, because it's important. We have to have a strong alliance so that it's credible, and that strength is going to ensure peace.
And to be clear, encouraging them to buy American arms.
Yes, but, I mean, first of all, the United States of America makes some pretty amazing weapon systems. And because we've had these ongoing wars, we have seen, quite frankly, some of these air defense systems be deployed, and we know their percentage of success. And so there's a reason that people want Patriot missile systems. It's because they're the best, and they happen to be manufactured in the United States by a United States of America company. But at the same time, we need all the defense industrial base, both in the United States and in Europe, to rise, to increase production. We need co-production agreements. We need to look for innovation and opportunities in places like Slovenia, where we can create jobs in Slovenia making, defense articles. It's that simple. We have a long way to go. I am certain we are the strongest alliance in the history of the planet, but we could be a lot stronger.
Last but not least, the Slovenian and the US positions on the war in Gaza could hardly be further apart. Does this in any way affect Slovenian-American relations?
It does not. I mean, we have a great relationship bilaterally with Slovenia. Certainly, the United States of America, we're paying very close attention to all of these matters, and we're also paying attention to what our allies and what their public opinion is. But at the same time, we have to end the killing, end the death, end the destruction. And that's what President Trump is clearly focused on in both in the Ukrainian conflict and in the situation in Gaza. We came in last night, had a chance to to talk to several of our friends and allies here in Slovenia. I'll have more meetings today. I'm sure that's on their mind. But I just want to reemphasize just one thing and be clear. I'm the U.S. ambassador to NATO. And so, I have broad shoulders as a former college football player. I can accept a lot of the criticism. At the same time, I'm responsible for making sure that NATO is strong and continues to be stronger. I have no policy responsibility for what we're doing or who we're supporting in the Israel-Hamas conflict. But at the same time, I do support President Trump. I have supported President Trump for a long time, and I will continue to, defend his policies, because again, I think they're the right policies.
So
we got plenty of time.
We shall see how the things will unfold. We all hope it will be in the direction of peace. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for today's conversation, and I hope you will also be able to enjoy beautiful Bled a little bit.
Yeah.
And I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Borders are just imaginary lines. In the globalized world of today, we are always on each other and we are always going to depend on someone. Seeing each other as a threat
Ladies and gentlemen, we would kindly invite you to take your seats because we are about to start today's discussion.
Kje sem pa jaz? Na koncu. Good morning. Good morning, Excellencies, Lady and Presidents. We are meeting at a time of many crises our world is facing. The wars, climate disruption, economic uncertainty, migration pressures, and the erosion of multilateralism. All this we will be debating at this panel. I'm pleased to welcome our distinguished guests. I have excellent guests here from Baltics to Central Europe to Adriatic Sea. And with us today are President Nataša Pirc-Musar of Slovenia. President Alar Karis of Estonia. President Jakov Milatovic of Montenegro. And President Peter Pavel of Czech Republic. Thank you for being with us today in Bled. For the beginning, let us turn to young leaders, young forum of BSF that are also here in Bled. Let's see what kind of perspectives they have on this changing runaway world. Please.
So if we agree that we're in a climate crisis, then what frustrates me the most is that the words are not followed by the actions. So if we're in a climate crisis, why aren't you acting accordingly?
I'm mostly frustrated about two things. First thing being simplification of certain regulations that are extremely important for tackling the climate crisis. And the second thing being the EU having double standards when it comes to acquiring certain materials, specifically critical raw materials, from non-EU member states.
Thank you so much, Young Forum. We grew up in entirely different world, I would say. United Nations were a big player. The rule of law was respected, more or less, at least. Free trade was promoted. Aggressive nationalism was widely condemned all around the world. Today, this foundation seems to be under pressure. Natasha Pirc-Musar, you mentioned those glory days that are over for our continent yesterday, and I wonder, is EU still able to defend this old world order, or have we actually already moved too far in this transactional, power-based order? Can I start with you, please, Mrs. President?
Sure, thank you very much. Good morning to everybody, and first of all I would like to thank all three of my colleagues to accept my invitation to come to Bled. I'm really grateful and thank you very much. Well, Madam Horvath, the questions you are asking are not easy questions, but I would like to say that I don't see any other continent who would do what is meant to be done in this world. European Union is based on values, on human rights, rule of law, democracy. Those are the three pillars. If we are not going to be vocal about those three very important things, who else is going to do it? I mean, there are some countries around the globe to do that, but Europe as a continent is well known about that. I know that I was, a bit critical yesterday. Some even felt that I'm skeptical about what's going on in this world. But I still truly believe in European Union. I am a European. And I think that there is enough power and will to do what is right thing to do. What I do miss, and what I would like to assent here, is the lack of trust among politicians. This is what is causing, a snowball to go too fast in a wrong direction. And I would like us to talk more, that the dialogue is always, a path towards solution. If we are going to discuss through the media, through the bullets, that's not the right way to do it. And I think that also in European Union there are enough politicians who are aware of that fact, that conversation among us, building trust, is something which can save the world. I mean, I sound like a Miss Universe right now. I do apologize for that, but I really truly believe in that. Because if I stop believing in that, and if I stop being quiet, that's not going to be me. And if everybody is going to say, well, yeah, the world is changing, it's okay, what's going on, then nothing good will happen. And for example, my biggest pain, being a lawyer, I see things through the legal perspective. That's the fact. But being a lawyer, it hurts me really a lot to see United Nations in such a situation that this organization is right now. This multilateral forum is the only forum that we do have for this planet. And what's going on in the Security Council, where we see a hybrid war with veto. You mentioned the old times. I was raised in the times where, the conflict occurred, the blue helmets were there immediately. This is not the case today anymore. Because the P5 countries, the countries with veto powers, are blocking the decision-making process. And we are discussing the reform of the United Nations, Tanya, for how long? For 20 years, as long as you are in politics, for sure. The foreign minister knows even more than I do. But without the P5 countries, no change is possible. But please, ladies and gentlemen, is it okay that the country who is at war is deciding with veto powers about itself? Is it okay that the United States of America are supporting Israel all the way through, no matter what? This is what I don't like in politics. Dual standards, dual morality, if you want. And I don't know how to change that. I don't have a magic wand, but more of us would think that way, the better. That's the solution I do have, because politics should be all about words and dialogue and not about guns. I'll make a full stop here.
Yes, but very short question. Just to continue what you were saying, because yes, you can, in this international world, voice quite strong opposition, critical positions to many foreign affairs points. Are you sometimes disappointed because nothing happens?
I am. I have to be honest, I am disappointed. And it hurts. I'm sad. I don't want to push myself, into the position to being mad, because being mad in politics doesn't work. But I am sad, and I am frustrated. I wish I would be a president of the United States of America. I'm not. I mean, that's a fact. I mean, but Slovenia does have a voice. Estonia has a voice. Montenegro has a voice. Czech Republic has a voice. In United Nations, it's one country, one voice. In European Union, it's one country, one voice. This is why multilateralism is so important.
Yeah. President Pavel, in this changing world, where is Czech position in between what is disappearing and where we are currently going?
Whenever I'm asked about assessment of current global situation, I try to compare it to a new bipolarity, and not as we used to know it in Cold War times. But it seems that what we are seeing now is a conflict between democracies on one side and different kinds of autocracies on the other. And we also see now in these days ongoing in China that the side of autocracies are now for some time winning the mental war, being probably more attractive than democracies, because democracies were not able to convince the rest of the world in between the two poles that the system of liberties, the system of respect to international norms, to human rights, is convincing enough for them to join. I believe, and I will follow what President Musar said, if we still believe that democracy in its liberal form is so far the best system that humanity invented, then we don't have any other choice than to fight for it by all means. And by all means, I mean also having a military element of power, because EU may be strong economically, politically, by ideas, but without being strong militarily, we will not be seen as a relevant actor globally. And the level of dependence that we have developed on United States since the Second World War, which was very convenient for European countries, because they could focus on social, economic development rather than building a military power, seems unsustainable today. And that's why I would suggest that if we want to preserve the way of life to which we got used in Europe, we will have to go through improvement of current system. That means finalizing European common market at all its aspects, to focus on building our own military capability that would support our political argument, and also think about more and better integration to speak with one voice. Because globally, Europe will slowly become irrelevant if we are not able to act as one entity. It seems that in this competition of let's say, a big boys game. If we act as a bunch of little boys, we will not succeed. And in that sense, I think the only way to remain relevant and to survive in this very tough global competition is through a more united Europe, whatever it means. And I think we'll have to be very flexible in rethinking Europe as an entity.
Thank you. President Karis, how do you see this urge that some powers want to divide Europe, and then, on the other hand, multilateralism that seems to be the excellent choice for small states, so that small states also have a voice. But on the other hand, this big boys game that Czech president was talking about.
First of all, thank you very much for this invitation to take part of this meeting, Natasha. Answering the question, big powers are great powers. I mean, they are present. I mean, talking about China, talking about also US, talking about maybe even Russia. Well, Russia is not that great power anymore, because when this war started in Ukraine, almost everybody thought that it takes only a week or two, and this war is over, and Russia will finish it. But it didn't happen. That means even with great powers, they too need alliances, like small countries like us. So we see from history, I mean, my background is developmental biology. So I like to put it in a perspective, so things would happen now, what might happen in the future or in the past. So also before the First World War and Second World War, there was also a mighty country, it was Germany, but turned out it wasn't that mighty at all, because other countries has friends and allies. And now even these big powers are looking allies. Let's see, today they are in China discussing not only Europe issues, they are discussing about the whole world, how to divide it or how to be more powerful. But for small countries, and Europe is powerful as well. Now the question is how President Pavel put it, when we should make it maybe Europe more united. Now the question is whether we want to become also a great power, or maybe we could use the power we have already and to make this multilateral world work, and also small the voice of the small countries bigger. And it's not that the power is in Europe. I mean, it's a rules-based world. It's also in Africa, in Asia. If you look back in history, I mean, in the 50s and 60s and 70s, Asia and Africa actually were in the United States talking about rules-based world because it was their interest. So we should more probably talk to these countries in these parts of the world, not only focus on Europe. So, I think the European Union is in a mental transition, where to go, whether to continue as a confederation or alliance like we are, or to think about more European Union in more tougher terms. So, but for small countries, there is no other option to stick to a rules-based world. And as Natasha mentioned, United Nations. I mean, yes, this discussions has been around, and every year I go there, I talk the same thing. We should make changes. But before we start making changes, we stick to the rules, because there is a charter already that allows, or actually tells to these aggressors not to vote instead of being abstained. So the rules are present, which don't follow. I always give an example from past, when we had the League of Nations. When Soviet Union attacked Finland, Soviet Union was immediately kicked out of League of Nations. Of course, later on, League of Nations also dissolved, but for other reasons. But at least they had this gut to make these decisions, which we don't have now. But yeah, but finally, what I want to say is we should more think about also not only on Europe, but also other small countries, because most of the countries in the world are small countries. So we should somehow stick together.
But while we search for this unity that all three of you have mentioned, we still have so many clear divisions on very important issues that are the most important issues in front of European Union at the moment. It must be very confusing for a candidate country like Montenegro, who wants to become part of big European family, whom to turn to. There are divisions. What do you decide for? How does that work?
Well, let me also very much thank Natasha for the invitation, and I do want to say at the beginning that it's always very lovely to come to Slovenia, to Bled. As a Montenegrin, I very much feel here like at home, and there is definitely something about perhaps being born in a country that used to be one country. One funny thing actually about all four of us is that we were all born in countries that no longer exist. And this is how I do also want to start perhaps this elaboration, because also as a representative of the new generation of politicians in the Balkans, I do feel a bit more optimistic about certain things that are happening in Europe. First of all, I do feel that Europe is now more united than ever before, and I think that's the fact. Think of Europe, for instance, 80 years ago, how weak Europe was after the World War II, and obviously that we are currently living once again in an era that I believe it was Italian philosopher and Antonio Gramsci who said that the old world is disappearing and the new world is still being unable to be born, and during that period of vacuum it's really a period of monsters. And sometimes that statement of this great Italian philosopher seems relevant when you're observing certain geopolitical trends even today. But nevertheless, when you really zoom back a bit, when you analyze what was a European response to always increasingly challenging geopolitical environment, it was always more unity. Europe was fully probably irrelevant at the geopolitical stage after the World War II. Think of the world back then between America on one side and the Soviet Union on the other side, and the European response was very rational. More unity. So the first action was to unite among the continental European countries, and this is how the idea of this European Union was created. And then the 70s were about consolidating the western flank. This is when Europeans decided to get Britain on. The 80s were about consolidating the southern flank, with Spain on board, Portugal, Greece. Then the 90s were all about consolidating the eastern flank of Europe. So, and I believe that again the answer should be more Europe. And this is why, as a representative, I guess here at this panel of the only country which is still not part of the EU, I can speak on behalf of the candidate countries, and there are 10 at this moment, that I do believe in an ever increasingly challenging world. I believe that Europe should stick with the policy that works, and that's the enlargement policy. So taking on board the Balkans, taking on board the countries from the further east, like Ukraine, Moldova, etc. I believe this should be the answer. And in that regard, as the president of Montenegro, which is the most advanced among the candidate countries, I always say that having Montenegro in is a story much bigger than Montenegro, because it would really be this positive spillover effect, a signal to all the other places that the enlargement is possible, and that Europe still knows, how to sort out its own issues.
I would like to expose one more issue that is very important in present world order. European-American relations. Ivan Krastev, recently argued in one of the articles that, of course, fundamental change is happening in the United States, not only regarding policies and institutions, it's actually a change of American identity. He used the expression with the rise of illiberalism and economic protectionism. Do you agree with Krastev? This shift will also come to European Union, to Europe, maybe in different shape to the West, and again, different shape in the East. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I believe if Europe wants to remain relevant, we shouldn't probably change the foundations. And the United States would always be a preferred partner because democracies should be natural allies wherever they are, including democracies in Indo-Pacific. But at the same time, we must not create new dependencies or prolong existing dependencies. We clearly see that partnership makes sense when the two partners work at the equal basis. And the partnership between Europe and the United States is very imbalanced. So for us to remain credible partners to the United States, to other democratic countries around the globe, we simply have to stand on our own feet. We have to have the capacity to take decisions and take decisions quickly and stand by them. And in that sense, I think the main headline goals that the EU has set for itself, which is competitiveness, then capacity to defend ourselves, and also to be flexible and fast in decision making. They are excellent, but then we have to go further and say, so what leads to meeting these goals, and go after it, because when things go more complicated, we should simplify them to the foundations. And probably look at it from the perspective of available alternatives. If we don't have any better alternative, let follow the one that is optimal, not ideal. And in that sense, I truly believe that we don't have any other alternative than to make Europe stronger, more decisive, and also more competitive. And in that sense, we have all the tools available. We have the potential that exceeds the potential of the United States. Economically, we can match China, but only under the condition that we are able to do it as one.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for your opinion. But President Piotr Musar, Ivan Krastev calls that Trump's revolution. Can we really believe that this is not going to influence European political identity in this or other way?
Of course it does influence European politics as well. But I would like to assent the same as Peter did. United States of America are our allies. In NATO, and European Union is an ally with United States of America because democracy is the root which connected us. And connects us still, I hope. Of course, what I do miss, that even between allies and friends, is sometimes needed to tell what's wrong. On our side or on American side. It's always hard to listen to critics. I'm not going to, criticize United States of America today, but I would like to assent one point. When we discuss the greatness of countries, which factors do we take into account? First of course, is the population. Yeah? The size of the country matters. And European Union is 450 million people. When Montenegro enters, 450 million people and 500,000. So we are going to be a bit bigger.
A great addition.
Correct. And then it's economical power. And of course, military power. And I would say the fourth factor is the wisdom of the leaders. We often forget about this. And when we discuss economical power, I would like to share with you the analysis which was done with the Australian Institute for Strategy and Politics. I told this to the diplomatic corps when we had a meeting a couple of days ago, and it's shocking to read this analysis. This institute is measuring the strength of countries in critical infrastructure using modern technologies. So they are evaluating artificial intelligence, nanotechnologies, biotechnologies. And in 2003 until 2007, they are measuring 64 fields. And in 2007, United States of America were leading in 60 fields. But then something dramatically changed. China was a galloping horse. Today, in 2023, China was the leader in 52 fields out of 64. Last year, they changed the data. China is leading in 57 fields out of 64. And I have to be honest, European Union is neither on a first nor on a second place in none of those fields. So those are facti bruti. But Mario Draghi said to all of us that we have to invest 800 billion euros to catch up with other continents. That's a necessity if we want to gain our shine and glory back. Economical strength, and then we will gain a political strength as well. And Peter is right. One thing that President Trump is doing good for Europe is that he's pushing us to be more self-efficient, self-independent, military-wise. It's a necessity today. I'm a pacifist by soul. But as a Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces of the Republic of Slovenia, with no competencies, it's on a paper. But nevertheless, I'm a lot among the soldiers, and I discuss military affairs. I know it's hard to explain to the people that we need to raise our budgets. All countries here present, we have the same problem to raise from 2% to 3.5% and then later on 5%. Estonia is here, the only country among us which is already contributing 5% of the national gross domestic product to the military. But above all, ladies and gentlemen, what is the biggest problem of European Union today is still the famous saying, whom do I call if I want to talk to European Union? Who's our leader? No, oh, come on, Jakov. But yesterday, colleagues, if you do allow me, we had a wonderful debate at the dinner. I will only tell one thing. We said, what about United States of Europe? I'm throwing this idea to you, to the audience. But we really need a strong leader in European Union. Strong Macron is not enough. Strong Peter Powell is not enough. Strong Natasha, strong Alar, strong Jakov. It's not enough. We need a strong European leader whom President Trump can call in the morning when he wakes up. And when he wakes up, he said, oh, should I call Ursula von der Leyen? No, Antonio Costa is probably the right one. No, I'll call Macron. And that's not okay. So if we are going to develop the unity of European Union, of course we will have to make changes. I don't know in what direction, but we need to discuss how to make us stronger, not stronger to conquer the world and say, European Union first. That was the slogan of Hungarian presidency. Not my cup of tea. But we have to think what the European Union is all about. And just remember the 3 pillars I mentioned. Not to export the military power, but the wisdom, the political pragmatism, and what's good for the world. Not what's good for European Union. Because whatever is wrong around European continent, it affects us sooner or later, if we want it or not.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And that was a good starting point from presidents of Estonia and Montenegro. President Piers Musar nicely explained what kind of Europe do we want. But can we really hope that all this change that is happening in America, the change of political identity, is not going to influence European Union as well, and European Union's political identity?
Of course it does. And there is also a saying in the business world, if you can't compete, collaborate. So this also applies to our relations with the United States. Presidents, they come and go. But these countries probably stay, and this transatlantic bond is important for us and also for European Union. Yes, we have a potential. We have been talking about already for quite a while. But this potential is not realized, and this economic power is somehow fragmented. That means we have to unite our power, economic power. And this report of Draghi, we have to take it seriously. Not that it's just another report. I mean, if you want to come out of this situation, you have to put more resources on research, on innovation, and so forth. This is like some countries, my neighboring country, Finland. If times are tough, they put resources on education and innovation. This is what the whole Europe should do. So this is definitely one point. And US is not able to fly alone. So that means we have to convince US that Europe is here to collaborate with the United States of America. So we are trying to do so. And the second thing is this divides in Europe. We talk a lot, but we don't listen. That means we have to listen more each other. Even we had yesterday discussion. We had differences in our opinions. That means you have to listen what the differences are and why these differences are coming up. I mean, looking back to history and so forth. Then you can starting discussion what to do next. Otherwise, some people talk about migration, some people talk about Russian aggression, and that's it. But we have to understand that in some countries, migration is more important than maybe the war in Ukraine. Although my position is it's not. But we have to listen to each other. And as I mentioned already, we have to find allies within Europe and stop this fragmentation. But talking about Union of Europe, or whatever you call it, United States of Europe. If you look at these things in a very logical way, it's the right way to go. But I can't imagine I'm going back now to Estonia. We regained our independence 30-something years ago, and telling to my people, listen, it's about time to make these changes, and let's have one leader in Europe and give all this power to basically centralize this power. Although I understand that's the only way, because all these confederations, they have to solve at some point. So that's not the future for one ally as such.
Thank you. And President of Montenegro?
Sometimes when I'm listening to what my colleagues are saying, I have the impression that they are too negative about certain things and too pessimistic. If they were presenting sub-Saharan countries and not, some of the most prosperous countries in the world. Really to make some things bluntly factual. The generation of my grandparents in Europe were killing each other. It was 80 years ago. 80 years ago. Look at where we are now. This is the greatest place, European Union. It is the greatest place by far in the world where one can be born. And I think, and I'm now maybe sort of saying something, that I should not, as not representing an EU member state, but I think that Europe is basically too much time spending on really, checking what the others are doing. I believe that European leaders should be sticking more on basically communicating between each other, obviously, more, and really, thinking about Europe and the way forward. I fully agree with what Natasha said. But I think, everything that has been happening in Europe over the last 50 years, after the bloodiest conflict in the history of the humankind, which was the World War II, which was happening mostly here, between European nations, look at what has been achieved. So it is very clear when you sort of, zoom out the things that Europe is moving towards an idea of European United States. Whether we should do that now immediately because Trump doesn't have somebody to call in the morning, I don't think that's the right way to do it. I believe that the gradual approach that has been taking place over the last 30, 40, 50 years through the customs union, through the single currency, through even now more political cooperation. There is a high representative for foreign security policy. There is sort of a coordination among the foreign security policy among the member states. Montenegro is not a member state, and we are fully following that foreign security policy of the European Union. So what I believe is missing in Europe is self-confidence. And I do want to see European leaders projecting more self-confidence about the things that are there in Europe. Institutions, rule of law, human rights, quality of life, state of social justice. Those are the things that are missing in many other places across the world. And I do want to see, as a president of the country that is trying to join the club, I do want to see more self-confidence on behalf of the European leaders.
Maybe it is... Maybe it is really candidate countries that the European Union needs to sort of make debate more positive. But then on the other hand, we have two very pressing issues that European Union needs to take into consideration on daily basis, needs to have a decision, needs to have clear thinking, needs to not only communicate but make decision. Of course, I'm talking about Ukraine, I'm talking about Gaza, and I will make two quick rounds on Ukraine and Gaza, but first let's hear the young European leaders, what they have to say in this debate. Please.
Security guarantees for Ukraine are security guarantees for Europe. Europe could prove by helping Ukraine that they are the leaders of the free world and the free world liberal order.
Good morning, everyone. I believe Europe's responsibility to Ukraine is absolute. I believe if Europe were to falter or were to back down from protecting Ukraine's territorial integrity, we would be betraying all of the values that make Europe so special.
The young leaders. So, if we first start, of course, with Ukraine, we have communications, European Union is debating whether to open secret channels with Russia, whether to talk to Russia, how to approach Ukraine, whether to go to talks in United States, and then what happens, Shanghai, Russia is there and European Union is absent. So clearly, not everything is so perfect in European Union as President Mijatovic is saying. So actually, European Union has a problem. It's not a player big enough to control the issues right on its borders. Do you see it other way, President Pavel?
I fully agree with President Mijatovic that I would also love to see many more European leaders to be more self-confident in expressing our wish and will. But to be self-confident, you must have the capacity for it. Being self-confident without economic, military and scientific and other kinds of power is wasting the time and energy. And that's why I believe that for Europe being more self-confident, we need to rebuild capacities that we don't have compared to other big actors.
Excuse me, but what would you do? You have this expertise in military security issues. What are your recommendations?
Well, in terms of defense and more capacity, I was suggesting that even in my times as a military head of NATO, the easiest way is not through creating EU army separate from NATO. It is strengthening European pillar of NATO and build on that structure that exists in reality. I believe it goes also along with the interest of the United States of having a stronger Europe that is not so dependent on their own capacities. We have to discuss with the United States the period in which we are able to build or strengthen European strategic enablers, potentially through a framework nation concept that already exists, and to build some dual heading within NATO command structure so that we can replace American officers whenever the United States decide not to take part in a European-only operation. And by doing that, we will strengthen European defense through European capabilities, through European defense industry, but will also assist the United States to act independently wherever they need. If they are busy, for example, in Indo-Pacific, which is now main focus for the United States, they will need all their strategic enablers for themselves. And then there will be a huge strategic gap in Europe. We cannot afford it. And by doing that, I think it is nothing in contradiction to the United States. It's actually helping the United States achieving their own goal. And it is also helping us. And by being militarily strong, by being strong in decision-making, but also being competitive in economy and in all the technological areas that Natasha mentioned before, then we can base our self-confidence on concrete capabilities and capacities. This is the way, the only way to go. Otherwise, we will have to accept the rule, the might makes it right, which is actually now even pursued by Donald Trump. And that's a very simple question. It's a very simple answer to the question posed by Ivan Krstev. If this so-called Donald Trump revolution is something to follow, I would strongly recommend not to, because it will bring us to the past. Instead of threatening even allies by tariffs, I would expect that we sit to the table, address the imbalances, and make it right, instead of imposing tariffs and threatening everyone around. So I believe that we simply have to get stronger step by step, achieving more self-confidence, and then we can play a role globally and start convincing others that this is the model to follow, not autocracy, not a position of power.
Thank you for explaining that so clearly, but on the other hand, it's quite scary what you were saying. Actually, it's so much really hard work ahead of us when it comes to important strategic decisions. But at the same time, we see the world changes daily. Russia, Ukraine, I mean, the whole thing needs immediate answers. Natasha Pirc-Musar suggested last year maybe that European Union should keep the channels open, just not to be sidelined from the whole debate about Russia. Some people were quite critical of your statement at the time. So have you changed the position from then to today, where we are now?
No, I'm even more convinced that we have to talk to them. And it was this year. I said it when I was having a speech at the European Parliament. Let us ask what the diplomacy is all about. Diplomacy is all about the dialogue. And if we want to find solutions, we have to talk to each other. Why I think we have to open channels. Not that somebody should now go directly to talk to Putin. Nobody's talking to him for the last 2 years, which is a mistake. President Macron was trying. He stopped. Angela Merkel didn't want to talk to him. She said, I had enough. I do hope that some channels are open. I know that Hungarians are talking to them, Slovakia probably as well. But do we see a problem that United States of America are negotiating for the peace and security in Europe and in European Union? Do we really think that United States of America are going to defend European Union standpoints? I doubt. And this is why we have to have our own channels. And the absurdity we are facing today, you know, when I was at the first peace conference for Ukraine in Switzerland in 2023, you know, everybody was full of emotions for Ukraine. We still are. And I'm still one of those presidents and politicians who is saying we have to help Ukraine because we are defending much more than Ukrainian sovereignty and integrity. But there, I was the only one who said, how can we have a peace conference on Ukraine without Russia being present? Or China? Those two countries were not there. And then, half a year ago, we had a second peace conference. And who was missing? Ukraine was not present. And Russia was there in the United States of America. I find this really, really not right. It's troublesome. Because at the end, if you want to stop any war, you have to talk to the aggressor. You have to. There's no other way. And again, I don't know who would be the right person to do that. But, you know, to talk about the ceasefire in European Union, it was a sin. But when the President Trump said, we have to discuss ceasefire, and then the European leader said, yeah, maybe he's right. This is what it bothers me. We have to lead the talks about peace and security in Europe. With the help of the United States, of course. We know that a lot of power is in President Trump's hands. It is. That's the fact. And, you know, special envoy for Ukraine and Russia. Do we have a special envoy for Ukraine and Russia in the European Union? Do we have a lady or a man who's doing the work behind? We don't. This is what I'm talking about. We have to try. Who? Victor? Yeah. Okay. I mean, Victor. I would say Giorgia Meloni and Alex Stubb, go and start discussions with President Putin. Somebody has to do it on behalf of the European Union. Somebody has to do it. President Trump has his own agenda. Of course, he knows that peace and stability in Europe affects the United States as well. But you know his slogan, America first. It's not the world first and multilateralism. This is not his focus, but it should be ours. Thank you.
President Karis and President Mijatovic, it seems that European Union constantly moves in the directions of same questions. We all remember very well the war in former Yugoslavia, when the role of European Union was strongly and equally contested as it is nowadays. So, what can you do as presidents of Estonia, of Montenegro, to influence this discussion, to move things forward? And of course, apart from all hard work that has to be done, that President Pavel suggested.
Do you allow me just, sorry, Alan, about the self-confidence of European politicians?
Some people don't like self-confidence.
Well, we are self-confident, but imagine 27 self-confident politicians to talk to one very self-confident man. That's the problem.
Yeah, what's the problem? We all can't sit behind the table together with President Trump. So we have to choose who is going to represent Europe. At the same time, Natasha, I do not agree. I mean, it's my personal opinion, but Trump is now trying to find peace with in Ukraine and talking to Putin. And I don't think having parallel discussions with Russia is a very good idea, because then these two negotiators are going to be played against each other. And Russians, they do exactly how it works and how to use the situation. So I would be very careful. What we can do now is maybe to stick to President Trump, to represent our opinion and so forth. So, and talking about self-confidence, I mean, yes, I agree. When we joined the European Union, we used the same terminology. European Union is the best and so forth, and it is. It is. But the question is now, because if you want to have a self-confidence, and the sign of a strength is also being critical and recognizing mistakes. This is something we don't want to do at this stage. So this is a sign of strength, and then self-confidence comes as well. So of course we need. But now let's stick to President Trump and make sure he's going to do the right thing. But we all understand now things have stuck. I mean, there is no peace agreement yet. War is still going on, even more aggressively. Although, I mean, Russia hasn't moved much during these 4 years. So it's a war of attrition. So, and ceasefire is a completely right thing to do, because you can't negotiate when all the bullets are going above your head. That means we have to have a ceasefire. This is what President Putin doesn't want. But we have to force him. And to start negotiating, you need two sides, Ukraine and Russia. And of course, it's not only a question of Europe, it's a Western world. It's a Western understanding our values, which is Putin doesn't want to recognize, and this is what he actually is fighting against.
President, yeah.
Can I just reply?
Yeah,
sorry.
I'll just ask you for a short reply.
I will be brief. Sorry, Yakov, I will be brief. I understand what you are saying, Alar. But what I wanted to assent is that we have to be ready for such negotiations together with the United States of America. We do not discuss with Russia. Putin is discussing with Russia. When we have meetings in Alaska, for example, 5 representatives of the European Union, President Putin and President Trump, do we have enough information? How do we know what President Trump negotiated over the telephone with President Putin? We don't. And this is why I think we have to have our own channels. And of course, I agree that now we have to we have to work together with the United States of America and try to negotiate peace. But I always have a feeling that whenever President Trump is saying we will start negotiating, then somebody from Europe goes, oh, can we please be there with you? This is my impression. Maybe I'm wrong.
Just a very quick answer. One sentence. Yes, we should be ready. The readiness should be there. If Trump fails, we should continue. So that means not wait, but we should build up the readiness to negotiate with US.
Yeah.
I think that Natasha, you should have called Melania after Alaska as the two most important Slovenian ladies now in the world. You basically should have asked her, Melania, what was really Alaska about. Again, to be very frank, I do see the point in what Natasha is saying, because what the President Pavel was saying about Europe becoming stronger and more self-reliant when it comes to security, I think that we all agree on that here. But then, if we agree on that here, it's a bit illogical not to not to open your own channels of communication with Russia, and to basically fully rely on America, while at the same time you are probably inadequately informed about everything that has been happening there. And this is just basically a pure rational sense. But however, I do want to make another point here. I do believe that despite a huge challenge which is being faced by Europe now in terms of security, look, if you again, analyze the trends, when Russia occupied Crimea back in 2014, you had enlargement of NATO. After many years, 2 Balkan countries entered, Montenegro and North Macedonia. Then once again, when Russia, attacked Ukraine in 2022, you had 2 more countries entering NATO, Finland in 2023 and Sweden in 2024. So as a result of Russian aggression vis-à-vis Ukraine, we basically had enlargement of NATO, thus making Europe more secure. But I believe that now we all agree that the peace, a just peace, for Ukraine needs to be found, and I do believe that without communication with Russia, that can't really be achieved. And I'm not a military expert, so I'm an economist. But from the very beginning of this aggression, I really always wondered, how do you push back a nuclear power? What are the tools that you are willing to put in place in order to push back a nuclear power? And to be very frank with you, even now when we are speaking about the security guarantees, after the meeting in the White House, there is a notion of security guarantees which would look like Article 5 of NATO, but yes, it's fine to speak. It's easy to discuss this idea at the panel, but it's much more difficult to really sort out a terrible crisis which is happening on a daily basis, where the people of Ukraine are dying in big numbers, as well as the people on the other side. So what I guess it's probably above my paycheck, and I'm just the president of Montenegro. But to be very frank with you, and I'm now very, very honest, you're always expecting from the presidents or the prime ministers of bigger countries, sort of a more wisdom and leadership, and you're expecting that those people would really have solutions for these big problems, and unfortunately they don't. And I think that's a huge problem currently in the world, that the presidents, the leaders of those who are really shaping the world are not really able to solve the problems of the world.
Thank you. I would like to open another divisive issue. Maybe at that time you will get a chance to quickly comment on Ukraine as well. Of course, it's a humanitarian, terrible crisis in Gaza. In the indecisive European Union about how to handle the whole situation. And let's see the recommendations that come from Young Forum.
I think Montenegro should stand with people of Gaza fully and support Palestine.
Europe must stand strong against further human rights violation and violence in general in Gaza.
We heard 2 statements, very self-confident, decisive Montenegrin contribution, and we had slightly more careful human rights and values that have to be respected. We have seen so many different conferences on Gaza, different speeches on Gaza. At the same time, the dreadful situation is going on. I would like to ask you a very simple question. What would you like European Union to do? What European Union has to do to end this humanitarian catastrophe and establish the just solution for Middle East? President Pavel. $1 million question, of course. I know. Thank God I'm not the president.
First, if the question is what the European Union should do to end this humanitarian crisis, I think we have to assess what will be the impact of different measures. If EU decides to cut some relations with Israel, being it economic or in Horizon Education, Horizon Europe program, it will not stop suffering of Palestinians in Gaza. It will not improve humanitarian situation. It will be important, but a political gesture without real impact. I believe that without having a common approach between EU and United States in creating pressure on both sides, I mean on Hamas first to unconditionally release all the hostages, and then creating pressure on Israel to ease tensions in Gaza operation, to allow access of many humanitarian organizations that are fit for purpose to distribute properly humanitarian assistance, to immediately increase material support and protection to all humanitarian workers. I think this is the only way how to achieve real progress, because otherwise it will be unilateral, and if the restrictions from Europe will be compensated by United States, it will not change the real situation. So that's the only way. I think no one would argue that all this problem didn't start by barbarian attack on Israeli settlements in October 23. The problem has started much earlier, and it has deep roots. What we see as the only solution to the problem is really kind of a statehood for Palestinians that has to be negotiated and guaranteed by international community. Otherwise, the problem will pop up periodically over time.
Thank you so much, President Pirc-Musar, and I have to ask you all for reasonably short answers. We have to make a conclusion.
What it hurts me the most, and I do apologize to you, Peter, you said the economical sanctions wouldn't stop the atrocities in Palestine. But we did that to Russia, and the war didn't stop. So this is very confusing for me personally. But when I see the humanitarian law not respected, I'm sometimes speechless. I don't know what to say anymore. And we know who can stop the war. And for example, if you are listening to the Russian foreign minister, Lavrov, when he's explaining what's going on in Palestine, between Palestine and Israel, I would just like to shout and say, copy-paste this to Russia-Ukraine situation. The same words are applicable. And why can we be harsh and united in one war and in the other? We are so reluctant that it hurts like hell. And for example, again, my legal soul is speaking out. The sanctions against judges of International Criminal Court by the United States, by the country which helped build this very important institution. And ICC was praised when it was dealing with cases from Africa. But now when they have to deal with the case of one of our allies, everything is wrong. And this is something I really despise. I don't like that. And I think what the European Union should do, it's hard to be united in those questions, especially when we discuss Israel. I understand, I try to understand Germany, I try to understand Austria. But if the debate among 27 leaders does not reach even a conclusion that something needs to be done, then we have a problem. At least we have to reach the decision, this is wrong, something needs to be done. And then let's start discussing what we will do. And again, We are strongly cooperating with the United States of America to end the war in Ukraine. Are we discussing with the United States of America, who are, if you ask me, the only country who can stop Netanyahu? Are we discussing, as Europeans, with the United States of America, what needed to be done, what needs to be done? So, yeah, we don't have a solution, but I always want to see the light at the end of the tunnel, to be more optimistic than pessimistic. But regarding Palestine, I'm not optimistic at all, I have to be honest.
President Karis.
Yes, I agree with Peter. It's a very difficult issue, and that's been around already for a very long time. I have been recently several times to Ukraine. I've seen these atrocities very close. And I've been to Israel, next to Gaza, and I've seen in kibbutz, and I've seen these atrocities there, what Hamas has done. I visited recently also Palestine, West Bank. I talked to the leaders. I've been talking to also ordinary people. Yes, Estonia, also Estonian government has said that there is a two-state solution. We agree. We haven't recognized Palestine yet, because there are no many countries who did. But what doesn't exist still is Palestine as a country. So if you talk to these ordinary people, they don't talk about statehood. They talk about, because there are a couple of generations already there who have been in war and in this situation, in this humanitarian catastrophe. We want to have food, we want to have education, and so forth. So we should start to provide this to people in Palestine. And Estonia is supporting Palestine, giving aid to Palestine as well. Of course, it's very difficult to access now, but recently also President of Israel visited Estonia, and I talked to him, also telling these atrocities which are happening now in Palestine. So we start solving these humanitarian issues first, and then might end up with discussing with a statehood. If you look at the map now, I mean, even the West Bank, it's a Swiss cheese. I mean, there are spots. I mean, it's very difficult to talk or start talking about statehood in this situation. So we should start with people, with ordinary people, to give help and assistance to them. And of course, Israel should get back his hostages as soon as possible.
Let me ask you one question. If we are here to support international law and order, there are so many United Nations resolutions regarding Palestine and Israel, so many resolutions that are actually not fulfilled.
That's a problem of United Nations. I mean, we just sign another resolution, start fighting with each other, and then end up with another one. So there are too many resolutions, but no action as such.
Okay, is European Union the power that could say, look, can we move forward on certain issues? Can you presidents agree when you see the horrible pictures on the television of what is going on in Gaza at this moment? Can you agree that something has to be done?
Yeah, I just said that. I mean, we should start with humanitarian issues and helping these people who are in...
But you don't exclude political solution as well? From the
yeah, of course, you can't exclude. If you talk about two states or solution for that region, then you have to talk also about politically.
Thank you so much. President Mijatovic, what is the position of your country on this issue?
Well, in that regard, Montenegro has recognized the state of Palestine, and we even have a Palestinian ambassador in Montenegro. Of course, not to mention Israel, obviously. So in that regard, we are, also by acts, not only through words, showing the devotion to the two-state solution. I always speak about Montenegro aligning its foreign policy with the one of the EU countries, and the question of Palestine is actually the one of the opposite direction. I'm in that regard need to praise what Slovenia has done recently, aligning your foreign policy with the one of Montenegro when it comes to recognizing Palestine. So, well done, Natasha. I guess that what I understand now in September, some other European countries will follow, including France and United Kingdom and etc. So, we have all reacted upon a very terrible, terrorist attack by Hamas on the state of Israel. But I do believe that nobody in this room can say anything good about what is currently happening in Gaza, and that is clearly a humanitarian catastrophe. And you can even hear between the way that presidents of Czech Republic and Estonia, the two countries that are not recognizing Palestine, the way that they are speaking about it, and the way that Natasha is speaking about it, it's clearly that the EU doesn't have one voice when it comes to this war. But again, to zoom it out a bit, you know that currently in the world there are probably more than 30 wars and 50 wars. There are only two in our media, Ukraine and Gaza. On Ukraine, there is more or less one European voice. On Gaza, there is not. And this is definitely something where Europe, as you rightly pointed out, is it possible not to find a common denominator when it comes to that situation?
Thank you so much. Let me just remind you that there were more than 200 journalists killed in Gaza situation. Soon we will not have anyone anymore that will be able to cover the Gaza situation, especially because the foreign journalists are not allowed into Gaza. But regardless of that, we have opened so many really important issues that are here for you, for your colleagues, to solve. But we don't have time now to play the final clip of the young people who are also speaking of welfare in the aging societies, climate change, all that where they expect, need, demand an action. I will now ask you for the final round. You have 8 seconds each. Okay, you have 15 seconds. Very briefly, please, the final point, and maybe you can also focus on climate, on young people. Please, Mr. Pavel.
I would only encourage in my 10 or 15 seconds. I would only encourage in such a short time the intergenerational dialogue, because young generation is obviously full of ideals and great ideas. Older generation is full of experience and skepticism based on that experience. But we have to bring it together to come up with some reasonable compromise.
Thank you. Natasha Pietz-Musser.
I would just like to pose a question to you. Are all the wars worth fighting for if the climate crisis is going to ruin our planet? Full stop.
Thank you.
Let's just go back to our topic, and I want to ask the same question that Natasha asked about who is going to call to Europe. So my question is, who is Putin going to call to start negotiations with Europe? That's a rhetorical question. I mean, who is a person? We know there are presidents already also now in China, so Europe is present also in Shanghai. But that's not the answer to the question.
You know, what is happening, what has been happening, throughout the world in August and now in September, there are big things. But I do want also to remind you, in comparison to the meeting that we have seen in China, G20 people are meeting, is it once a year? And so there are many meetings. I wouldn't really be making a big fuss out of what is happening now in China. I do believe that Europe needs to find its way to be more self-confident about itself, about the values that it's representing, and about its own, prosperous future. Because sometimes I feel that we, from the outside of the EU, more trust in the EU than those who are currently leading the EU. So, to go back to what I said at the very beginning, I believe that Europe needs more self-confidence.
Thank you so much. You have all been wonderful guests. Thank you. Thank you so much.